Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
How are you this morning?
Good.
It's wonderful to see all your smiling faces. Thank you for joining us this morning. We want to thank everybody for being here, both here and online, for your tithes and gifts to our church community. We are very grateful for your support. Without you, we couldn't be here. So thank you for being here in person, and thank you for your tithes. Today is a special day. It is Guest Speaker Sunday. And we're very fortunate to have Elizabeth Betzel here as our speaker today. So Elizabeth, welcome. Thank you for being here. Elizabeth is a licensed Unity teacher, but she's also a math instructor at Columbus State. So it's a little bit of right brain, left brain going on there. Very flexible. She has a long background in Unity and has pursued many other forms of spiritual wisdom, in addition to being a licensed Unity teacher. For today, Elizabeth's title is Portals All Around. So Elizabeth, we're anxious to hear about that, all those portals. We'd also like to welcome Ralph Leesburg for being here today and regaling us with his music. So thank you, Ralph. As always, we start with prayer. We're very inclusive with our prayers, holding the highest in mind and heart for ourselves, each other, and our communities. If you're listening online, remember you can always send in a prayer request via our website, which is unitydelawareohio.org. Just use the prayer request tab at the top of the page. So now Ralph will lead us into prayer with a song.
I am so blessed, I am so blessed, I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed, I am so blessed, I am so grateful, I am so blessed, I am so blessed, I am so blessed, I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed, I am so blessed, I am so grateful, I am so blessed. Sing it with me. I am so blessed, I am so blessed, I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed, I am so blessed, I am so grateful, I am so blessed, I am so grateful, I am so blessed.
Good morning and welcome. I invite you to close your eyes and to follow your breath. And just take a moment to feel your feet on the floor and the support of your chair. Breathing in with gratitude, aware of the constant support that is available to us in every moment. As we allow this awareness to deepen, we sense the sacred presence of God within, that wellspring of wisdom leading us in the paths of goodness, of peace, of freedom and wholeness, that benevolent energy that is always at work, replenishing and healing our body, refreshing our soul and renewing our mind. We are open and receptive to that divine life within each one of us, that divine energy that expresses each one of us. And we affirm this highest of all truth, that God is mightily at work in each one of us gathered here today, whether in person or virtually. We know that we live in a God-infused universe, and that the mighty power of God flows through each one of us, through each precious soul that we are holding in our hearts and in our prayers this morning, through all living beings everywhere. God's wisdom is available to each one of us in great abundance, guiding us to right decisions, leading us to take right action. God's infinite love enfolds us, cradles us, giving us comfort, security, and solace. God's presence watches over us in all that we do, whether we acknowledge it or not. And we rest in that presence as we enter the silence for just a few moments to be still and to know God. No matter what challenges we face, God's power is within us at all times, working constantly to guide us on our path of life, to support us, to provide our needs, to sustain us, to comfort us, and to protect us. We give thanks for this powerful truth with complete assurance that God is working in us moment by moment to bring forth our highest good. Thank you, God. And so it is. Amen.
I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for all that I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed. Why do you know that I'm a snowbird? Cheryl and I go to Florida. Unfortunately, where we stay isn't there anymore. It probably won't be until Easter, so we may not be staying there, but I'm going south somehow. I'm not doing another Ohio winter. But this is a song. One of our favorite beaches is Lighthouse Beach on Sanibel Island. When the lighthouse is still there, all the other buildings around it are gone. The sand is still there. A lot of the foliage isn't there, but hopefully we'll be able to get back to Lighthouse Beach one of these days. But I always like the idea of a lighthouse as being a metaphor for spiritual awakening somehow or another. That's what I was thinking about when I wrote this one. There have been dark times in my life. There were times I could hardly see. There were times when it seemed like the whole wide world shut off its light for me. There were times that I felt so bad. Despair had taken its toll, like I was shut up in a windowless room, a dark night of the soul. It's when I saw the beacon of light, saw the beacon of hope, felt the tower of strength, giving me the power to cope, lighting up my path, showing me the proof. It was there all the time, the lighthouse of truth. Now when the dark times, the sun seems to disappear, clouds cover the skies, I know hope is always near. I just have to open my eyes. It stands taller than the trees, its light is shining true over the raging seas, with the promise for me and you, all illuminating where I need to go. Never is it faltering, ever does it glow. When I think about how I got here, I sometimes wonder about the changes in me, from a person who was living in fear to a person who is living free. And if I just keep moving ahead, living life day by day, accepting my daily bread, with the truth to light my way, that's when I'll see the beacon of light, see the beacon of hope. I'll feel the tower of strength, giving me the power to cope, lighting up my path, showed me the proof. It was there all the time. The lighthouse of truth. Yes, it was there all the time. The lighthouse of truth. Thank you. And now, once again, Lily Spencer.
Thank you, Ralph. Oh, and thank you for that song. I was checking it out while you were performing, and I could see people doing what I was doing, smiling, nodding their head, tapping their feet, tapping their hands. We're going to talk about that this morning, about music and how it can be a portal, so more on that to come. Well, good morning. Glad you could make it out this morning. Beautiful, beautiful day. Such a glorious fall. We drive over from Gehenna, and I noticed the leaves, and Ralph and I were talking about it a little bit before, and Michael, how, you know, when the sun comes in at a certain angle, some of the trees just seem to glow this year. They just take your attention when you're driving. Such a beautiful, beautiful sight. So just luxuriating in that this morning as we talk about portals. So I had the opportunity to attend a week-long retreat in Taos, New Mexico at the end of September. And it was both a difficult experience and a transformational experience, as good retreats always are. And I noticed that when I returned back to my normal life, my daily life, at the 1st of September, or I'm sorry, the 1st of October, life seemed easier than usual. You know, I felt lighter, and I noticed that I was much more calm and less reactive than I often am. I had energy and an optimism to be with whatever came my way. And this is wonderful, I thought. You know, it's not quite like I approach life most of the time. And I thought, you know, I had a desperate wish that I hope it lasts this time. I really hope it lasts. Well, you know where the story's going to go, right? Yeah, I'm a human being, and unfortunately we humans, we can experience these expansive states, but they come and they go. However, this time my curiosity was piqued. If I was able to experience that expansive state and luxuriate in the ease and the richness of life, why couldn't I replicate that experience? I mean, I knew it was going to fade. I hoped it wouldn't, but I knew it was. But why couldn't I replicate it? What had happened at that retreat that allowed me to enjoy that glimpse of my higher self for a while? And what would it take to experience that expanded level of consciousness again? Then I remembered my fascination with portals. I believe that we all have an innate curiosity about and an attraction to portals. Just think of the stories that you loved as a child or maybe enjoyed with your children. Alice in Wonderland, Mary Poppins, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, A Wrinkle in Time, and more recently, The Golden Compass and the Harry Potter series. All of these popular and beloved stories are about portals. Magic openings, only visible to those who have the awareness to see them. Doorways hidden in plain sight that allow us to enter altered states of reality. You know, and I've noticed that our curiosity doesn't wane with childhood. It follows us even into adulthood. A favorite theme of science fiction is the portal, an extraordinary opening in space that connects travelers to distant realms. It is as though we have been programmed to search for portals, to escape, to become enlightened, to commune with the divine, to connect with the cosmos, to experience a deeper level of consciousness. A good portal is a shortcut to the unknown, if only they actually existed. However, it turns out that they do. And a NASA-funded researcher has figured out how to find them. The portals Jack Scudder of the University of Iowa has discovered are places where the magnetic field of the Earth connects to the magnetic field of the sun, creating an uninterrupted path leading from the atmosphere of our own planet to the atmosphere of the sun 93 million miles away. As without, so within, was my first thought when I read that. But you know, the knowledge of the existence of these portals, be they portals to distant physical destinations or portals to higher states of consciousness, is ancient wisdom. We know the story of the Israelites who were wandering in the wilderness for 40 years, on their way to the promised land, just having escaped the bondage and the slavery of Egypt. Well, while they were wandering, God instructed them to create a portal so that he could dwell among them, so that he could commune with them. We read in Exodus 25, the Lord said to Moses, "Tell the Israelites to bring me an offering. Then have them make a sanctuary for me, and I will dwell among them. Make this tabernacle and all the furnishings exactly like the pattern I will show you." Within each one of us, there's a reservoir of divine wisdom, a seed of universal truth just waiting to be discovered. This is the God within us that we refer to in our morning prayer. Our true nature, that spark of divinity that we can find in each one of us and in everyone else. That is what I was connected to when I returned from that weekend or that week retreat at house. And that is why I experienced life in my daily routine with such ease, such richness, and such grace. We live in a world that is infused with portals to the divinity within each one of us. We have portals all around us, but too often we're unable to focus our attention and intention in ways that allow us to perceive them and then to perhaps move to the other side. This morning I'd like to discuss where we find portals to the higher states of our own true nature and hidden wholeness. Then I will share some practices that will help us to notice the portals that surround us, awaiting discovery. So the portal contained in the tabernacle was actually the ark, which was located in the Holy of Holies. The ark was a carefully crafted altar. On the top of the ark, we're told that a seraphim, an angel, resided, and in the emptiness between the wings of this angel is where God dwelled with the people of Israel. The ark was a wooden box, and in that wooden box there were 2 tablets of stone that contained the 10 Commandments. You may be wondering, well, why were there 2 tablets that contained the 10 Commandments? Well, we know that after Moses received the 10 Commandments from God on Mount Sinai, when he came down, in his absence, the Israelites panicked and they created a golden calf. And they were worshiping around this altar of the golden calf. And I love Moses because he has a lot of the demons that I have. He got angry. And he threw those tablets down and he broke them. And all kinds of things happened around that, but eventually he received another tablet of 10 Commandments from God, and so there were 2, the broken ones and the whole ones. And it really intrigues me that both the broken and the whole had to be in the ark, because they were the symbols of God to the Israelites. We know that God is in the paradox. God is in the tension that we create to hold the opposites that we see all around us. And so it was a very potent symbol of God to the Israelites. We can create our own altars, our own special places to commune with the God within. I actually have 2 of them in my home. One of them is on my back deck that overlooks some woods behind our house. And I go out there every morning, go out there with my caffeine jolt for the day, my cup of green tea, matcha green tea latte. And I go out with my journal, and I go there, and in the morning, as I wake up, I meditate and I journal. And this is a very, very sacred time for me. I've noticed that when I've been too busy, like this morning, I didn't get that time out there. I come away a little ungrounded, and my day doesn't seem to go as well. Now, I have promised myself that I will go there when I get home, so that I can refresh on that. But, there are all the important symbols that are out there, but they're quite natural. Water is a great representation of water in our service today in that fountain. I have a little brook. There's a little brook that runs down in the woods behind us. Light is important. Sometimes we put candles on our altars. I get to enjoy the natural light. I have a wall of trees in front of me that's just been glorious all through the summer because we've got so much rain. Very heavy leaf coverage and foliage, so I feel very sacred, very, kind of held in that place. The blue sky above, I've noticed how it goes from white in the summer to the deep blues in autumn, sometimes dotted with clouds, the sunlight coming up from the east. So all of those important symbols of the divine are in that altar. And you know, it's not the only use of that altar. It's not like I have to have a separate place that I use only for that, because it's more the intention that keeps our altars alive within us and keep them alive for us and serve as portals to our higher self. So later in the day, my husband and I might enjoy a meal out there, weather permitting. I visit with friends when they come. So it's kind of a multi-purpose space, but at that time in the moment, because of my intention, that becomes my altar. Now, my other altar space is upstairs in my workspace. I work remotely, so I'm working from home. And it's, I have put it on a little bookshelf that's behind my desk. And of course, I have all my important symbols there. I have a little fountain that is there. I've got a couple of candles. I have a beautiful picture of a meteor shower. So there's some natural elements in there. And when I go to that space, it's usually during the working day. Most of the time after I've gotten triggered by something that's going on, my buttons are being pushed and things aren't going well. If I remember, I don't always do this, but when I remember just to take a moment, it's like a little timeout, an adult timeout, you know, when you're in the middle of it. And I just turn around, I have some incense sticks there. It's 10 minutes of incense, which is glorious. I'll light some of those, I light the candle, I'll turn on the fountain. And I'll just take a moment to be, take a moment to breathe, take a moment to observe the meteor shower that is, you know, represented there, and just take a moment to remember. You know, when we visit our altars, they allow us to follow some rituals. And rituals are just activities that take us to the deeper part of ourselves. And it's in those times when I commune at my altar that I can remember that even though I am in this world, I'm not of this world. And I can remember that I'm more than just my personality and my self-identity in the moment that is pretty frustrated and triggered. And when I can take these moments in with my altars, it's a portal to the divine within me. It gives me access to the true part of me, which can then help me with all of this personality stuff. You'll notice that in both of my altars, I had some kind of representation of nature. And that's because nature is when we're in nature mindfully, that is a powerful portal to the divine. It was back in 1970. My family had gone on a camping trip, and my father and one of his friends, they'd taken their families to Kinzua, Pennsylvania. Kinzua is a pretty remote place, and we were even a little more remote in that where we were camping was on an island, so the only way to get there was by boat. So we went down on a Friday, we set up the camp, and my mother wasn't able to come down with us because she had to work. So she was going to drive down after work. And so around 10 o'clock at night, my dad started heading over in the motorboat to pick up my mom at the ramp that was there at the park. And I volunteered to go with him, just to keep him company. We didn't have cell phones back then, so he had been over early, figuring he'd have to wait a while for my mom to come. And so we went over. So it was just a short trip over to the ramp. And we were there on the boat, just kind of talking, just kind of silent, and the boat's kind of rocking in the waves, and the waves were lapping up against the boat. It was just an incredible experience. And I had seen a night sky when I looked up that I had never seen before. It was brilliant with light. Being out there in Kinzua, we didn't have the light pollution that we had. I grew up in the Cleveland area, so we didn't have the light pollution that we had in Cleveland. I didn't know there were so many stars, and that the stars are so bright. So I was really taken with this. And my mom, she'd gotten lost on the way up. It was a pretty remote place, and so she was we were there 2.5 hours instead of an hour, waiting for my mom. And while we were there, a meteor shower occurred. It was brilliant. It wasn't just 1 or 2 shooting stars. It was raining shooting stars. And to this day, I can get into a state when I go deeply into that memory. Because watching that magnificent display of nature, I felt connected to the vastness of the universe. It was almost as though my personal boundaries dissolved, and I realized, even at that young age, I was only 14 or 15, so relatively young, that I was a part of something much, much bigger than my physical body represented. And I experienced a wonderful unity with all of nature in that moment. Well, the scientists tell us that the benefits of being in nature are numerous because there's a very strong maternal connection between nature and ourselves. Think about it in the language we use. We often refer to it as Mother Nature. That's because just as children come from mothers, we come from nature. What makes up our bodies is found in nature. Because we were originally one with nature, we are closely and directly intertwined with it. This is one reason why Mother Nature replenishes us, nurtures us, sustains us, and completes us in every aspect and essence of our higher self. Unfortunately, our modern lifestyle alienates us from our natural home. Andy Goldsmith reminds us that while we often forget that we are nature, nature is not something separate from us. So when we say that we've lost our connection to nature, what we're actually saying is that we've lost our connection to ourselves. And when we feel that we've lost our connection to ourselves, we can use nature as a portal to reestablish that connection with the divine within us. Our emotions are yet another portal to the divine. Most of us, whether we intend to or not, polarize our emotions into the positive ones that we enjoy feeling and into the negative ones that we really don't want to feel. Yet each of our emotions, both the positive and the negative, have a vital role to play in our overall well-being. In their balanced expression, true emotions not only help us respond effectively to life as it's happening around us, but they also connect us to the divine essence of who we really are. Each of our emotions then serves as a sacred portal that invites us to step out of the domain of the mind, through the doorway of our body, and into the realm of divine energies of the universe that dance around us and through us. Anything that arouses these powerful emotions within us and allows us to be with them can serve as portals to the divine. Music, the visual arts, the performing arts, a powerful movie, poetry, a compelling story, all of these can transport us to alternate states of consciousness that lead us to an experience of our higher self. And finally, one of my favorite portals to the divine is the silence. We had a brief moment to experience that in our opening prayer this morning. Gania Norris notes, within each one of us there is a silence as vast as the universe. And when we experience that silence, we remember who we are. Eckhart Tolle tells us that the deepest meaning of the present moment is inseparable from who we are in our essence. That beloved verse that I paraphrased as we were going into the silence this morning from Psalm 46:10, "Be still and know that I am God." This verse offers us a perennial gateway to the realization that when we go deeply into the present moment, we are going deeply into ourselves, getting behind the story of ourselves, getting behind our personality and our self-identity. For most of us, our sense of identity that we function with in the normal world comes from the thoughts that we have in our heads and the stories we tell about ourselves, the stories that we create about what it means to be me. The problem with that story of what it means to be me is that it often leaves a lingering and dissatisfying sense that we're never complete. When we rest in the silence, we can sense that what we experience as ourself is no longer derived from those thoughts, those beliefs, those stories that we tell about ourselves. When we meet ourself in the silence, as Gania Norris talks about, we recognize that who we truly are comes from the timeless being nature, not from our thoughts, not from our beliefs, not from our stories about ourselves, not from our reflections that we see in the way other people react to us. No, we're a lot more than that. And when we're in touch with this being nature, this timeless being nature, that is when we can be in touch with the center of sacredness that is within each one of us. So there are numerous portals to the divine, the true essence of our being. And I mentioned just a few this morning. Each one of us has access to our own portals that allow us an opening to the higher levels of consciousness where we can experience life that is easy, that is light, that is full of energy, full of optimism. What are some of the practices that we can adopt to increase the likelihood of becoming aware of these portals to the divine that are all around us? These doorways that are hidden in plain sight. Well, what do you think? What do you use to get in touch with this part of yourself? You all know the answer. You all have probably several answers. We all have our own unique way, right? Okay, well, did anyone think of meditation? This is one of them. Probably. Meditation is the foundational practice. It is. When we practice meditation, we're strengthening our ability to be present with what is arising in us just as it is, without reactivity. That's the key, without reactivity. You know, when we say our buttons get pushed or triggered, we're reacting to the moment. We're not being present with what really is. When we become grounded in our body, in the present moment, and we watch our thoughts, feelings, and sensations come and go without attaching to them, without judging them or resisting them, this is when our, what we call our monkey mind, kind of grows quiet. Do you ever feel like your mind's a ping pong ball, going back and forth between thoughts, assumptions, causing feelings to arise, reliving the past, going into the future. That monkey mind that just takes us out of the present moment. When we can quiet that, it allows us to perceive reality more fully. And the portals to the divine that are hidden in plain sight, in order to see them, we have to slow down. We have to kind of relax into the present moment and embrace all that is arising with compassion and acceptance, rather than reactivity. Another practice that increases the likelihood of finding portals to the divine is writing. I mentioned that in my morning altar time. I always write. Well, true nature writing is an effective and profound writing process that is catalyzed by a poem, a rich piece of prose, a proactive prompt, a compelling work of art, or a poignant piece of music. After experiencing that prompt, whatever it might be, we write fast and furious, messy, stealthily evading our inner critic that wants us to fix things. We drop the concerns about our grammar, about our audience, about our punctuation, and we just allow our honest and powerful words to emerge without censorship. I've done this practice in community, and I've done this practice in solitude. When I do it in community, the practice then is to read aloud what we've written, without preface, without apology, without explanation. And those who are doing this process with us, they listen without praise, without words of critique, without words of connection. They just hold the space and listen. If I do it in solitude, the practice is similar. This time I'll just read the writing out aloud to myself, without preface or apology or explanation, offering these words to myself and hearing them without praise, critique, judgment, or evaluation. In the end, whichever way you do this practice, I found that in the end, I leave with a feeling full and unburdened, with a piece of writing, a portal to my deepest, most candid self that I often don't look at or don't access. And I've often found that it's just the start of something more. It sets me on to some practices or to some experiences that will enlighten me. I think that we can probably all think of at least one song that when we hear it, triggers an emotional response. Maybe it was the song that accompanied the first dance at your wedding. Or maybe it was a song that reminds you of a difficult relationship. Or maybe the loss of a loved one. Barbara Else, Senior Advisor of Policy and Research at the American Music Therapy Association, explains, we have a deep connection to music because it's hardwired in our brains and bodies. The elements of music, rhythm, melody, and lyrics, are echoed in the physiology and functioning and being. And so that's why I was looking around as Ralph was singing to us this morning. I realized I was caught up in it. My mood lifted, I saw that I was smiling, I was nodding, the lyrics resonated with me, there was some agreement. And we find this with all music. Music is another tool that helps us slip through the portals to the divine. My husband has a practice that opens his awareness. At the end of most days, he listens to a provocative or bittersweet piece of music, which allows many emotions to arise and to pass through him. And he says that it is like a cleansing of his soul from the day's buildup of stuff. And he's pretty faithful to this practice. I can usually hear the music when he starts to play it and know that his workday is done, in the evening. And finally, there's the power of peripheral vision. There are two main types of vision that we use every day. And we use them without thinking about it. There's central vision. That allows us to focus on what is directly in front of us and to see it in clear and minute detail. And then there's peripheral vision, which allows us to see out of the corners of our eyes without turning our heads, without moving our necks. When we overuse our central vision, which many of us want to do, it's like putting blinders on, the blinders that we used to put on a horse so that they could be controlled without being distracted or triggered by the environment around them. However, when we put blinders on, we zoom in on just one aspect of all of the reality that we're experiencing. And when we zoom in on that one aspect of reality, we forget about everything else. We don't see the rest of reality, we ignore it. Peripheral vision, on the other hand, allows us to get a much more complete view of all of the reality that is occurring around us. And it's required to see the portals, because very rarely are the portals directly in front of us. They're always lingering on the sides, inviting us to come through them. So when I'm confronted with something that triggers me and narrows my focus of attention, I can feel it. I can just feel it just kind of close right in, and I know that it's not good to overuse that central vision. What I remind myself is I remind myself to turn to wonder. Most of the time when I zoom in on something, it's to judge it. It's to, make it right or wrong. It's to create my assumptions about what's going on. I'm making up stories about what's going on, and guess what? Those stories are hardly ever true. And even if they are, it's of no help to go there. So turning to wonder rather than judgment opens my perspective. It's like going from central vision to peripheral vision. And it allows me to access the peripheral vision, the bigger piece of reality, and see where the portals lie. So perhaps you've noticed a pattern here. Detecting portals to the divine is ultimately a practice of letting go. Letting go of our stories, our assumptions, our attachments, opening up with compassion and acceptance to all that is happening around us. Mark Nepo describes this practice beautifully in a poem that he's entitled, Where To Now? Now that I've come out of hiding, my fears are forgetting to be afraid. Now that I've dropped my opinions in the rain, my story is too small to cover my heart. Now that I've put down what I thought was important, I'm surprised by the angels lost along the way. How we got here doesn't matter, and where we're going is just something for the mind to chew. I'll meet you here, the palace that difficulty opens, the magical doorway to the shape of who we are. When we can drop our stories about ourselves and others, when we can drop the boundaries around our heart and see each other and ourselves through the eyes of love, compassion, and gratitude, we see the essence, what is most true about ourselves and what is most true about the other. When we see with these eyes, we are touching that which is most sacred within each one of us. In connecting with ourselves and with others from this place, we are passing through a portal to the divine. Let's close in a word of prayer. With grateful hearts, we breathe into this moment, aware of the portals that infuse our world, our experiences of life. We give thanks for the myriad opportunities to commune with the divine presence that expresses each one of us. And so it is. Amen.
Thank you, Liz. That was enlightening. Enlightening. I've played this song every October for the last 10 years, probably. And it goes along with what Liz and I were talking about earlier on. Here comes that changing time of year. Springtime flowers have all disappeared. Things that were growing now are slowing. No along, 'cause summer's gone. The autumn leaves are changing hue. October skies are bluest blue. The harvest bins are overflowing, and soon it might be snowing on the lawn. The summer's gone. And that's what I like about the season. They keep on turning and then returning like rhyme and reason. Here comes that changing time of year. Summer flowers have all but disappeared. The harvest moon is softly glowing. There'll be no more showing off your tan when summer's gone. And early sunsets and later dawns mean summer's gone.